Oh, you mean this one?
Yeah, on that side.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this one's better. Because the sun's on this side. Hello, welcome to this poetry book club with Anatalia Vallez. And yeah, we are doing this book here at Avida Bookstore. And if you're local, you can actually pick it up from the bookstore. And if you're not, you can also get it from her website, which I'll post in the description afterwards. Yeah, and we have the author herself, Anatalia. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello. So, yeah, tell us like how you came about making this book.
So the book was a couple of years in the making. I think it was constructed sort of out of not understanding a lot of the world and having a lot of questions. I think that's where a lot of creativity sometimes lies is in asking questions, and I had a lot of questions. And I had a lot of time alone, and my mom always told me like your best friend are a pen and a pencil, or a pencil and like paper, and I journaled a lot growing up, and slowly and surely through creative writing opportunities, I was able to learn more about the craft. And over the past 2 years, 4 years ago, started doing sort of a DIY MFA with Libro Mobile and Sarah Rafael Garcia. And we basically looked at different genres of poetry and of different prose and just different genres of writing to get a better understanding of the craft and constructing of a manuscript. And then somebody in Texas, shout out to Flower Song Press and Edward B. Glade from Flower Song Press in Texas, wanted to publish it. And so, yeah, now we have The Most Spectacular Mistake, which is going to be 2 years old in April.
Congrats on that.
Yeah, thank you.
How did you come up with the title? It's a very interesting title.
So The Most Spectacular Mistake is from a poem. I tried to put it somewhere in there, and because I personally like it. I think it's kind of cheesy, but I really enjoy when the title is in the. It just feels like a sort of like a nice little Easter egg. It just feels like a really nice little reminder of this is where the title came from. It comes specifically from a poem where I'm sort of affirming for myself the importance of self-love, because I had always thought that thinking of myself or putting myself first was a mistake, and that I was actually supposed to serve others and be there for others, and that was part of just the conditioning and that I had, and that I took a lot of pride in that, and so and I was rewarded in life, right, for putting others before myself. And so it felt very challenging to say, no, I'm actually going to take care of myself first. And it felt like, oh my God, what if it's a mistake? And so I said, well, if it's a mistake, let it be the most spectacular mistake you make. Yeah, So that's the title of the book, or the title of the.
Yeah, and that's really good because earlier we were just talking about how it's okay to make mistakes and to be a flawed person and not a not a perfect person, right? And we were talking about how there is no such thing as a good person and no such thing as a bad person. There are just people who do good things and people who sometimes do harmful things or bad things. And that's why the goal ideally would be to be whole rather than to be good or bad. And I think that's really important for us, especially as what I now call visibly racialized people. It's not my term. It was invented by the modmans of the Facebook group. Seems like their spirituality is cultural appropriation. Diana Sunshine and Alexandra Guzman. And they invented this term because there are a lot of white people and white passing people who ignore the difference between race and ethnicity and just try to pretend that they're oppressed too when they're not. Like no cop would ever arrest them, I mean, would ever kill them is what I mean. If they're stopped and things like that. That people who are actually visibly racialized, that you can actually see it on their faces. Yeah, they don't have the same privilege. So yeah, that is what I mean by visibly racialized. So we're put in this box, right? This false binary of good, evil, the perfect magical fairy or the imperfect demons, right?
Yeah.
And there is no middle ground for us. There is no humanity. Like we're not allowed to just be in the middle. Either we're seen as the thugs and the savages, or we're seen as the perfect magical angels and fairies and monkeys. And the moment we make,
it's dehumanizing either way.
Exactly. That's the point. And the moment we make a little bit of a mistake, then we're put off the pedestal and we go the other way. And happens on the individual level, and this happens even on a collective and systemic level with the way the people in power has their attitude towards us. Like a good example would be like the way Doreen Virtue, who was colonizing many different cultures, including my culture, Hinduism, and when she was doing that, she saw it as these perfect ancient magical cultures, and they're all you can learn something from all of them, and blah blah blah. And she was making these tarot cards and oracle cards and all of these things, and angel cards, and she made a whole bunch of millions from that, and then she became a born-again Christian and did a total 180 degree and said, it would be fine if you just convert, it's fine, whatever. But what she went further. She went back and denounced everything she did, and then she went even further and she started calling Hinduism and Hindu gods and goddesses demonic, and tarot as demonic, oracle cards as demonic. So it's literally, she literally called them demonic. So that's why I keep mentioning the good evil false binary and also the perfect, the exaltified perfection, and then the demonization false binary. So in that false binary, we're not allowed any mistakes. It is very dehumanizing. So yeah, that's why I love this title. So for those who just joined, we are having a book club for The Most Spectacular Mistake with local author who is right here in person with us, Anatalia Vallez. And we were just talking about how the book title came to be. Yeah.
So the my name, Anatalia, my first name is from my great grandma. That was her name. And Valles is actually a combination of my two last names from my mom and my dad's side.
Oh.
And so the
Valles,
two L,
yeah.
the two L's in Spanish make the Y sound.
Oh, yeah.
So Valles.
Oh, so I was pronouncing it wrong the whole time. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Valles?
Valles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, and like what was like it's been 2 years, and it's like how many states has it been already? Like it's been to all the states, right?
Probably by now 20.
20?
It was about 12 around the first year anniversary of it. And yeah, it's wild when I think about how much it has done in spreading to different like places and places that I've never been or never even thought like people would be interested in checking out the book. I'm very new to publishing and all of that. I think that's really a whole world. I think I've talked to Gundan a little bit about like how wild and weird and the fact that I was able to be published at the time that I was able to be published and got an opportunity that is something that people want and aspire to do their whole lives, and for whatever reason they don't get the opportunity to do it. I just hope that it inspires someone out there to like do it, even like the book says, like a spectacular mistake. You know, that it is still something that's, if you have that calling to write and to put your work out there, that there's somebody that's it's gonna serve them so much. And so that's the biggest lesson from the book, has been just how much people that I've never met have resonated with the book, and how powerful it is to share something and put it out there.
Yeah, it's one of the concepts that I like is the idea of scaling impact, right? And because you cannot be like in person like this in every place at once, and it's, you know, your physical presence is limited, right? And it has, you know, it has the highest value because of, you know, the energy and focus and presence required to be in person, you know. Not to mention, you know, like the transportation costs and all of these other stuff, right? And even this one-on-one like this online also has, you know, a lot of a lot of energy involved. There's an energy cost to this, you know. Whereas a book, it's not easy to make a book, but it is one of the simplest, like the plane plans. Yeah, it's one of the simplest ways to be able to reach and, you know, make an impact on people without your physical presence. Like they can still like see and read and experience your ideas and your emotions and, like, you know, your story and stuff. And yeah, and the reason why I'm saying it is because I didn't even realize how much of an impact it can make until I started this book club. And also this is why it's so important to have their book clubs at your local bookstore, and because in this age of Amazon and things like that, and I know there are issues with like um, some people need to use Amazon because of accessibility and things like that, even though it's like this crazy mega corporation that's doing a lot of oppression. But yeah, it's also important to support your local bookstore, and so this book is now at both Libremobile in Santa Ana, and this one in Tustin, this bookstore that just opened like over a year ago in like November 2020, yeah. And yeah, so that supports the author, supports the local bookstore, because now the bookstore knows like exactly what book to get, what book uh, will sell, because there's a demand. There's a demand because you know you created the demand by creating a book club, right? And so that entices the bookstore to actually buy the book. And so yeah, when I created this book club specifically for this book, before this was the Poet X. Let's go to see video. Yeah, fighting for your voice, English. I didn't know like who would show up, how many would show up, etc. I never know with these things, but I just do it anyway and just trust. And that's why I also go live, instead. So at least that way, I can still make an impact. But yeah, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I came to this bookstore, and the owner was like, so excited. This is one of my favorite stories about this book, making an impact. And first of all, she said, "Oh, we ordered 6 copies, and they all sold out," which was great news, of course. And then she also said, "Oh, my friend was reading a random page out loud in front of my mother-in-law, and she just burst into tears, and it just she was just so deeply moved and touched, and that to me is like an amazing story, like that this book, without your physical presence there, made an impact on this person."
Yeah. I mean, words will do that. Poetry will do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've had stuff on my page where I was talking about lentil soup, and I was like talking about it was just a poem that I was writing when I was very angry, and somebody was like, "I related to this." I was like, okay. I think I remember the wording that they said was something like, "I related to this in a way that you probably didn't intend it to, but it it impacted me." And I was like, wow, something as small as like a poem can really remind somebody else of their own experience, and be a mirror to their own experience, be a reflection for them. And I think that's something really powerful about words.
I maybe share this with a few more people. Yeah. What was the most and also if anybody wants to request to be on the live and ask questions of the author directly, you can do that too, or post in the comments. What was the most challenging poem here that you wrote in this piece, and what made it challenging, and how did you get through it?
The most challenging one, a lot of them were challenging. Actually, I'm going to be completely honest with you, with us. There are some pieces that I worked really hard on that were really difficult for me to put on the page. And then when I was organizing the book, it just didn't make sense to put it in this. And that was still the process of writing and editing stuff that was very personal and very painful. because it's one thing to like write it down creatively, but then it's another thing to be like, oh, this line needs to be crossed and this thing needs to be done. But it's like it's your word. It's your experience. And how are you gonna like edit it? How are you going to like cut things out of something that is so raw and vulnerable and you want to share? And I think that process, doing that over and over and over again, and I think I give credit to Sarah Rafael Garcia, where she was like, you're gonna write and you're gonna put it on the page, and then you walk away from it, and you come back, and you're seeing it from a different place. You've already put it on the page. That first draft that you had, that was really impactful and really powerful and brought you to tears, and that's still gonna exist. That essence is still gonna be there no matter what you do, as long as you keep the essence of it there. And so with the edits, it's only helping the piece. It's what you want. It's like the edits only help improve the piece, but the essence is still there. And I think that process was really difficult, but also very healing. That I can read pieces that were very painful at first, and now I get to read them and they bring me joy that like I've that I worked on this. Yeah, I think that was the most difficult part, just the editing process.
Hi Hugh, and hi Tanish, and hi Thoughts by Steve. Yeah, and Tanish said people watch after too. Yeah, the replay. So for those just joining, we are interviewing the author of this book, The Most Spectacular Mistake, in person here at the local bookstore, Vida Bookstore here in Tustin. So if you're local, be sure to buy the book from the bookstore. If not, you can also buy from her website directly, and also on Amazon as well. So whatever like works for you. And that is so important. I was thinking about having a good editor is so important, because you need a good editor has that fine balance, right? Of like if they say everything's good, that's not helpful, you know. This is why compliments are not helpful either, like especially in the context of editing, you know. But then if they're like too harsh, if they're like if they say everything's bad, then it's like very discouraging, right? So they need that like being right in the middle, you know. So good editor is so important.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I would say if somebody is interested in writing and wants to do generative writing is what they call it, writing workshops at like little to no cost, or like bartering, you know, like in exchange or stuff like that. Those are really great opportunities, because you get to hear and you get to see the process of editing, right? Like live, right? Like happening live. I like you'll see like in open mics or stuff like that, where people will just share. They'll share one word, or two words, or a phrase, right? While a poet or while a speaker is sharing something, because that's an important reflection. Like, that was impactful. What you just said, that part, that got me. That is different. That popped. And those things are really important, because when it goes through the editing process, sometimes it's like there's fluff, or there's stuff that could be another poem completely, but like those key words, like those really hit. And so how do you emphasize, and how do you build something out of what you have that has those powerful moments that you are already getting good feedback from? And those in creative writing workshops and like open mics and all of that, you get that you get that feedback instantly.
Yeah, that's so true. Like a friend of mine made a similar comment, like especially when she was starting to write her own songs and singing at open mics, and she was telling me how she was annoyed by compliments like, "Oh, it's so amazing," and she was like, "What does that do for me? Like, it doesn't do anything." And she was like, "I would rather somebody tell me like, oh, like this part moved me in this particular way and made an impact, and this is why." Like that's more helpful, which is so true. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it's not like compliments are also gracious and important. I think your presence there and supporting are helpful
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
I think it's just like it's good. I think that's like I wouldn't say it's motivating to hear the applause, to hear the resonance, like, and it's also really helpful to hear further critique or like further acknowledgement of it, because it just helps the artist.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes people, you made such an impact on them, they don't know what to say, and they can only say like, "That is amazing." Sometimes that happens too. You leave them speechless.
Yeah, I think that's something that I get nervous about sometimes. Well, I'll share something, and then the room is like silent, and I'm just like, oh no, oh no, oh no. But they're like just like catching their breath because they just saw something that they hadn't seen before, and like so you really don't know. But yeah, definitely tell people how you feel about their work. That is something. Absolutely, tell people how you feel about their work.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they say that like the silence is in a way like, if there's silence instead of clapping, that means you went really deep. It's deeper than clapping, like which is so true.
Yeah. And you also just gotta write for yourself. You gotta do it for yourself. Like I always go back. I think we talked about this before. Like I always go back to my younger self, and I'm like, "Are you happy? Like, are you finding joy in this?"
Yeah.
Because it's important to honor yourself too, and to like if you're doing something, if you're sacrificing time away from others to focus on any sort of art, make it worth it for you, because an empty arena is full of applause, or you're still gonna feel empty inside if you don't do it for you, for you. So I think that's also important.
Yeah, like write first and foremost for yourself. Because the irony is, if you go deep enough, that, especially if you're truthful and honest, like what you're expressing might be what other people want to say, but they're afraid to say it for whatever reason. Like, it's like Ben Okri has made a similar statement about authors, and their novels that they write, which I think can also apply to like songwriters and the albums they make, right? Like filmmakers and the films they make, and poets and their poetry collections. Basically, he was saying how every author that has made a big impact, is trying to answer like one single question from different angles with every new novel that they write. And if they're lucky, if the stars align, that question that they're exploring with each novel is deep enough that enough other people resonate, and if enough people resonate, then they make both the impact they want to make as well as the success that they want. They have both. So I think that's what it reminds me of too. Yeah.
That's cool. Everybody in the chat is talking about their writing and how they get very vulnerable in their writing.
Yeah, Tanish says, but I do get very vulnerable with things I share. Yeah, me too sometimes.
There's poems that they're pieces that they're never gonna
There
share.
are things I'll never share. Yes, we should all be writing for ourselves. Thanks for adding that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I don't know how to take the silence. Yeah, because sometimes we're not comfortable with silence, especially in this culture, and
Ooh, yeah.
that's why there's a term called awkward silence, even in one-on-one like this, in relationships too.
The need to fill the silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just going back to all the comments. Denise says I have to go, but this was nice. Yeah, thanks for being here. Hugh says, LOL, sometimes I feel I'm barely scratching the surface.
Yes.
Yeah. My show is at 2. Oh, yeah, you have a show too. Peace and love. Peace and love, Denise. Yeah, have a good show. Yeah, Hugh, Hugh's still here. Oh, there's a plane coming there. That's when our self-judgments, right? All of our programming, all of the things that our culture, religion, school, right? TV shows, even our parents, maybe our guardians when we were growing up. All of those voices come in when the silence is there, and we're like, oh, was it that bad that there's silence, right? So we're never sure with the silence. Yeah, we are very close to the airport here in Tustin. Like the Irvine Airport is like 10 minutes away, I think. Yeah, so that's why.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's also a Western idea of silence. Even how like generationally my grandparents take silence. There's just like, whew, like we're chilling. They just take silence as they get it. Like there's a richness in silence.
Yeah.
Like imagine what would happen if everybody just got more silent in their day. Like collectively, if we just got more silent. I think there'd just be more opportunities to reflect and think before jumping to conclusions or jumping to things. I think that there's something really into leaning into the awkward. Leaning into the awkward, because I think the awkward silence is that it's like short, or like it's a weird amount of time. But if you wait it out, then it just becomes like a breath, and then oh, let me tell you about that day. You know what I mean? It just it becomes more of like the ebb and flow of life.
Yeah, there's a beauty and a richness in just being silent together. Like it reminds me of a popular saying that's attributed to like several different people, which is that love is not two people looking into each other's eyes, but two people looking in the same direction together. And part of that is they're not always talking when they're doing that. They're they're being silent together. Like one of the most beautiful moments of my life was when I was with this person, and she and I climbed a tree together, and there was a lake in front of us, and we were just looking at the lake together in silence, and that was enough. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. To like remember a moment that you shared with a person where there was silence, and you just got to experience something together.
Yeah, you says you're so wise. That's you. That's so true. So let's go into two of your poems. One of my favorites is
okay.
That sounds so sweet, Kanan.
Yeah, your
oh, my story.
Yeah.
About that person. Yeah.
we're taking requests. So Kundan has tabs ready.
Yes. Look at this tab book. I have tabs.
Not playing around.
And that way, I don't even need the table of contents. I just go exactly where I want it to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a tab system for that. I have like, these are the 5 favorite poems in my book. It is Stop Raising Him, He's Not Your Son, Without Over Apologizing, Beauty in the Eye of the Beloved, which I actually posted yesterday, and the poem Heart, and How to Have a Good Cry. Yeah, I was telling you in the previous interview that I love that the poem How to Have a Good Cry is actually in it, because crying is so important, and it's another thing that can be taboo here in the U.S. and in some places, in many places. And whereas in our like Hindu culture in pre-colonial times, Kundan ain't playing no games. Yeah, exactly.
Prepared.
Prepared.
It's a prepared poetry book club.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there is a map from we have a thing called Vastu in Hinduism, and I believe Feng Shui, the Chinese Feng Shui came from Vastu because their system came later, and a lot of like Hinduism and Buddhism was later exported to China through trade and syncretism, right? So in the Vastu system, we have architectural drawings, and crying was so important to the culture at the time that if you look at the architectural drawing, there's literally a room, like a box, for crying. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah.
You know something else that I recently experienced with 2 friends. I don't know. I'll just shout them out. Fernanda and John Haido, which are friends from college. We met up online, and I wasn't feeling well. It was just a couple of days ago, and I started crying, and I was just like, I'm really sorry. Like I'm not feeling well, and I really was like taking it moment by moment, because I was like, I don't feel like my peppy, happy self, and like I want that. I want to be that in that state of mind to hold space for my friends. And at the same time, I was noticing I have to be genuinely honest, and this is where I'm at today. Is that enough, right? And witnessing and seeing and being witnessed and being held in my grief and what I was experiencing was so powerful. And even virtually, right, how we can hold space for one another's grief collectively, it helps so much in the healing process. And so something in this one talks about like having a good cry, right? But there's also something beautiful about being held while you're going through that process, that you don't just have to do it alone. You don't have to do it alone. That you can be held. Trust that you can be held by others in your most vulnerable place. That's something that takes trust, obviously. But I think that is something that I'm learning, right? Like after publishing this book, is that holding grief in community can also be really healing, and it's very connected to ancestral healing.
Yeah, being held is so important here. Yeah, that's why, like, even with the crying room, I would imagine that they don't go alone to cry, or they might sometimes, but I think they might also like go as a group together and cry together, or have like some people hold them, whenever they need to cry.
Yeah.
That's what I would imagine like happens back in those times then. Yeah. And also this book, before I go into the poem, this book also has a structure for those who like to read in order. Because with poetry, like I just usually like go like to the poems that attract me first, like although with this book I did read it in order for the most part. So there there are 4 sections. There starts with roots, then goes into core, and then goes into heart, and then goes into head. And then there are like illustrations for this as well, which is, I think there's a separate illustrator for that, right?
Yeah, my friend Untitled.
Right. As well as the cover. I want to talk about the cover too, right? This is even though it's a line drawing, I think it still represents, who you want to represent. And yeah.
While you talk.
Oh yeah. So yeah, there's the book. That's the cover of The Most Spectacular Mistake with the representation of your culture right there, right? And one of my the proudest things that I've done is to replace books written by the white male authors with more women of color. And I've noticed the book covers have changed to more like covers like this that represent black and brown women right on the covers. And I've heard a lot of black and brown women saying that they wish they grew up seeing themselves on the covers of these books, like, and this is so true. That's why even though representation is just the beginning, it's like the basic decency, bare minimum. I think it's so important to have that representation. And one of my favorite stories I read recently is from the movie Encanto, which is based on Colombian culture. And there's a big family and all that. That's the roots illustration.
While we wait for planes, I'll show you the illustration.
And yeah, that's a great idea. So in this cartoon, there are different shades of brown and black, which itself is amazing. And as well as the hair itself, there are different like hairstyles in this cartoon. Even though it's still Disney and Disney is problematic, at least they did something right with this movie. And one of my favorite stories is that there was a 2-year-old black boy who looked at one of the black kids in the movie, and there's an uncanny resemblance to the kid in the cartoon and himself, that he literally like got up to the screen and turned around and pointed with this big smile, and he was like, "That's me!" Like, and it was literally him. Like he saw himself almost literally in that cartoon, and it's like that is so important. Like a lot of people didn't grow up with that representation, back even as recently as 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Disney is problematic. Yeah.
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 Disney is hugely problematic. Walt Disney was anti-black and Hindu-phobic, so and it has almost never had a black character who was actually human. Like if you look at all the Disney cartoons, all the black characters are either frogs or even in Soul, like he was human for only like 15 minutes. He was a soul. Yeah. But yeah, at least with that cartoon, there's almost like an exception where like they try to do a lot of things right. Yeah. Encanto, I highly recommend watching it, especially if you're from Colombian culture.
Yeah, and let us know how representative it actually is from Colombia, because I'm not Colombian.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history too in terms of Colombian history and who tells the history there. There's a lot of nuance.
Yeah. I do know a few Colombian friends who said there was quite a bit of representation, like even the one who had the magical ability of strength is based on a female bodybuilder that was in real life. And the butterflies come from the fact that about 19.7% of the world's butterflies actually are in Colombia. So that's why there was a butterfly representation. So there was even these little details out there. And I have a Mexican friend who said that even though it's not exactly the same culture, she relates to the big family, because she grew up in a really big family as well. Yeah. Actually, my friend Sean Hill is half Colombian, half black. So I will ask him to watch and sing, and also Michelle, who took part in one of my book clubs, is Colombian. So yeah, let's go into the reading.
Right.
Start with this one. Stop raising him, he's not the son.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you have the book.
I'll show you. Let me show you this is core.
That's core, yeah.
Let's see. What page is it? Okay.
Oh, hold on. I have to. No, it's not. It's 19.7%, so it's actually 20% basically. Yeah. All right, let's go into the poem.
Stop raising him, he's not your son. The problem with men losing themselves in my eyes is they'll never find what they're looking for. They'll call me angelic until I act foolish, then bash me for sending mixed signals. They'll call me talented until I cannot juggle anymore, then reject me for deceiving them. How dare I know myself better than they know the tears that come from their eyes? What they've searching for, they lost a long time ago, and I cannot be their childhood toy, their scratched up CD, their favorite blanket. I almost wish I had a sign that said, keep your melancholy to yourself. Because if their eyes wanted to dance with my soul so badly, they would need to learn a whole new rhythm. And how can I trust someone who doesn't know the beat of their own wound? Half man, half pixels that come in and out of focus with a hunger I cannot fill. There is no other way to put this gently. In no language will this sound sweet.
Thank you for reading that. Yeah, that's a lot. That's referring to the butterflies. Yeah. Yeah, Hugh. So, if you buy the book and read it yourself, right before that poem and after that, there's another poem, the two other poems that are kind of related, similar themes. There's I improvised a monologue, and then there's also The Last Fuckboy. So I highly recommend getting the book yourself so you can read that. So, what inspired you to write these three, related poems?
So, actually, recently on Twitter, somebody said something like, y'all talk about healing your inner child, but, healing your have you had a conversation with your inner teen? Because, she's probably mad. And I think I commented something like, yeah, all my petty poems come from my inner teen, because she has so much that she kept silent, that she just needs an outlet. And then a really funny refrain that I sometimes will share, is write some poetry, what is it said, petting, the pettiness that comes from sharing your perspective. Sometimes it's not.
It comes from
sweet.
Frustration, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it's not. Yeah. It's not sweet. Sometimes what you have to say is not kind. Sometimes what you have to say is your truth, and it's going to sound rude. Yeah. To somebody that feels personally attacked.
Especially if they're the one you're talking about, the one.
Yeah.
And because they have the power and the privilege, and their privilege is challenged for a second.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's just so many assumptions. It's happened to me. It happens to me. I'm almost 30, and it still happens to me where people will infantilize me, or will make, or this what is it called, manic pixie dream girl that I recently my friend and I were talking about that, like how this label is imposed, and then they're disappointed. Like a person, I'm specifically talking about like relationships and dating, and how there's sort of this
Let me put that in the comments for people who don't know. The term is... And for those who don't know, what is the manic pixie dream? Actually, let me read the Hugh's comments. Hugh says, I love that piece. And her reading was amazing.
The last fuckboy.
Yes, the last fuckboy. My inner teen is just chilling and enjoying mode of my teen. That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, the last fuckboy. It's right there. See? The last fuckboy. So, yeah, that's a trope, exactly. For those who don't know, what's the manic pixie dream girl?
So it's a stereotype, an archetype that was created by like the male gaze. That is really represented in really well represented in media and in like movies, especially when it talks about like film, and how it's filmed in a way and directed and produced in a way that puts the cis male protagonist and kind of uses the woman as sort of this like girl that's supposed to help the character development of this protagonist, that is there to like freshen up their lives, or like stop them from doing awful things, and like changes their lives or something like that, but it's not
basically like their muse.
But it's not an actually like full-formed person. It is like an
and
object.
They're often like fun-loving and things like that. They're very like fun, like ha 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 ha.
Yeah, until they're not.
Until they're not, yeah.
Until they're not, and then it's like, oh, you deceived me. When it's just like you never actually got to. A good example is 500 Days of Summer.
Yeah, 500 Days of Summer. Yeah.
Because
and also Yes Man with Jim Carrey too.
Yeah, because it just shows the way that like in 500 Days of Summer, the male sort of is delusional about like what happened with this relationship, and like she clearly is stating what she needs and what she wants in the relationship, and she's like, but he is so in his head about her, and like basically creating his own version of her, that she feels so she breaks up with him, and she's like, no, like I don't want this, because she realizes that he's not actually respecting her and not seeing her as a